Hey guys, Jedi270 here from AirsoftRx.com and TX911 Gear. This is the last rifle that we're going to do this internals review of. This is the WE version 4. I call this the version 4 because it's the open bolt, and this is the fourth one I've seen on the market in the past few years. The thing about WE having 4 generations is they have learned from every single bug or disaster that they've ever had. And this rifle out of the box is the most realistic as far as the buffer goes, which we'll look at in a second, and the hardest shooting out of the box. So is this one good for CQB? Yeah, if you use the impasse and you dial it down a little bit. Or you go to a field where it's not a big issue if you use heavier ammo, because some fields require that you use .20s and not .25s unless you're in a sniper role. I've seen that happen. So let's get into this one. And I had, like I said in the other videos, I had a guy tell me, God love him, I thank him for being one of my subscribers, and I'm not trying to bust on him. I want him to know this. He said that this gun's complete garbage, and it's not. It's not pot metal, it is die-cast steel. You can see the mold line right here. And also, you see this little disc right there? Well, that is a solid steel rod that's driven down in the center of that hammer for reinforcement. So when you're talking about a reinforced part, that's what a reinforced part looks like. Nowhere in the KWA are there reinforced parts. The one thing I do not like about WE is the trigger box and all these little screws here, all screwing down in there. I've never liked this. I've always thought it was just a bad design. Now, there's two or three different ways you can take care of this. One, the most important way, is to use blue Loctite, which is similar to the strength of the glue that holds on a stock orange tip. You'll have to apply heat to back these out, but the problem is sometimes these screws are not of the quality to handle the torque that you have to put on them even after heat is applied, and you end up stripping them out or twisting the heads off, and you got to drill them out. So another way to do this is to simply, before you start using this weapon, take these out, take one of them, okay, so you don't lose any parts, and take this one out back here, this brass one, and go to a hardware store and say, I want tungsten steel screws to match these in threads, size, diameter. Then come back and use blue Loctite and blue Loctite them down, because they will back out on you. Now, the other way to do it is just be religious with it, and after your game, when you're cleaning, make sure you tighten these screws up. Make sure you use a proper fitting screwdriver, similar to the one I have here, because you will strip out your screw heads. And a lot of the stuff on WE is all contained inside a trigger box, which is nice because it lends itself to not being jamming up, with different fouling and that sort of thing. That's what I like about WE too. And like everybody else, they use this little pin. A good way to solve this problem, I haven't done it yet, is to sand this side down, the other side down, throw some JB Weld on both sides. Now, I also got a comment about the weld. It's a co-weld epoxy. It's a hardener and an epoxy. You mix them together, you slime it on there, use like a playing card to thin it out like a trowel, and let it dry for 24 hours, and it will hold that in forever. There's no need to actually ever take this roller bearing out. You won't need to upgrade the roller bearing any. I don't think anybody even makes anything like that. So if you upgrade the hammer, it usually comes with the roller bearing already, so you just have to take the whole system out, trash it, or put it in your box, tech box for later as a spare, and then put the new one in and JB Weld it as well. I don't know if I just did this or not, because I've done this a couple of takes. Back here is the stock buffer. WE stock buffer is probably the most realistic buffer I've ever seen in these guns, barring the new KJs and NOs, because I haven't seen those yet. But there is the Bushmaster and the stock. Now this one is way heavier than this one. This one weighs about like a robin's egg. Very, very light. But out of all the guns that I purchased, this one shoots harder stock out of the box. I just wanted to see if it would handle it. So I put in the real steel Bushmaster. You can buy the Angry Gun Kit for $50. You could buy that buffer at a gun store for $12. It'll come with a real steel spring. ditch the spring, because basically it's like water or electricity. Like I said before, we'll find the route of least resistance, and it will either bust the body or bust the gun somehow. So you don't want to overdo it. The stock spring is fine. This will add just as much recoil by changing out the buffer as the Angry Gun does by going with the real steel buffer, and it won't be overkill. A lot of people tend, myself included, to upgrade these guns so much that they go beyond their design limits and they break. And then the first thing out of people's mouths are, oh, it's garbage, it breaks too easy. No, it's because you use garbage thinking and you didn't think ahead of yourself enough to know that, ooh, if I put this heavier thing in here, what's it going to do to this, or what's it going to do to that? You have to think about these things, guys. They're not designed for it. Another thing that I like about the WE, and other than the fact it's die-cast steel, not pot metal, I'm so tired of hearing that term, the weight of the bolt carrier group, this is solid. Okay, most of them are hollow. This also gives you a louder report of metal to metal on that buffer, and it sounds really nice, and it gives it more weight. And this is where your recoil power is coming from, is the weight of this bolt carrier. But also, we looked at all the other bolt carriers, and you notice how they were rounded off to some degree. Well, WE's is rounded off more drastically than any other gun out there. And this right here and this roller here are the precise reasons why this gun shoots as smooth as it does. Its action is the smoothest of all of them tested, to include the KWA, way smoother than the KWA, shoots harder than the KWA, has a higher rate of fire out of the box than the KWA. To me, it shoots better than the KWA. I'm sorry, it just does. But the KWA is a nice gun. But basically, you know, for the most part, this is an awesome system. Now, this pin up here is another item that's going to have to be looked at as far as the roller bearing goes. You see right here, you have to JB weld that too. But up here, you got to be careful, because this slides around up in your charging handle, and this rides along the system. So you don't want to put so much up here to where it's going to foul up somewhere. So be careful when you do this. But this is all preventive maintenance that's going to help you in the long run. And once again, here's another screw. Make sure that when you add every screw, every turn in your maintenance plan when you're working on these guns, guys. You have to. You just have to. It doesn't make the gun garbage. It doesn't make the manufacturer a piece of crap. It just means that you're not taking care of business like you're supposed to. And you end up messing the gun up. So 9 times out of 10, it's operator error. It's not the fault of the manufacturer. But it's a great gun. The internals are made of steel. They're die-cast steel, just like KWA is die-cast steel. The only difference is it's not as thick here, and the sear is not as thick as the KWA. Is that overkill? In my opinion, yes, because it doesn't have to be that thick. But KWA feels like they had to. That's what they're calling, I guess they're calling reinforced by making it thicker. It's redundant. It makes no sense. It doesn't have to be that way. But it is what it is. So all these little preventive maintenance issues make this one heck of a gas blowback rifle, not to mention the fact that it is so realistic on the back end here on the buffer. It's one of the most realistic buffers and buffer tube setups I've ever seen. Another thing that's really realistic about it is its externals, the differences in colors, shades of the body is just incredible, and WE has one of the best anodized finishes I've seen so far on these rifles. So that being said, I thank you for watching, and come see me again.